At the outset, I would like to thank Sanjay Mahapatra and the Enterprise IT World team for inviting me to moderate this panel discussion. Before we begin this panel, I just wanted to ask you all, do you all know what the significance of 17th May? 17th May. Significance of 17th May? Anyone? It's celebrated as, today, friends, is celebrated as World Telecommunications Day and Information Society Day. Okay, and I think perfect day to be talking about telecommunications, because none of your digital transformation initiatives would work if you don't have good networks to power all these applications. And we're talking about information, so Information Society. So today is celebrated as World Telecom Day and World Information Society Day, in case you all didn't know. Now, the topic for today is adoption of Industry 5.0 and digital twins. Now, these are very, very vast topics. And what we'll try to do is, over the next 45 minutes, cover some very key important dimensions as it relates to this topic. Now, talking about manufacturing, I think one thing which is very, very clear is that manufacturing is going to be a very key contributor to India's economy. Today, manufacturing contribution to India's GDP is around 14 to 15%, and there have been a number of initiatives from the government to ensure that manufacturing contribution to GDP hits 25% of GDP in the next few years, and in the process, generate millions of jobs. Now, that's not going to be easy. Now, when you look at India, we are not just competing against its ecosystems, but we are also competing against other countries, right? So China, Vietnam are also countries that we are competing against, right? So as far as the manufacturing is concerned, what is very important is, so while you focus on good and great quality manufacturing practices, what is also equally important is smart and sustainable manufacturing practices. And talking about smart manufacturing, which is what we're going to cover, I just wanted to highlight a couple of very key insights that came out of a PricewaterhouseCoopers study, which was done late last year, PwC, well-known consulting company. And they did the study, and they surveyed more than 1,500 manufacturers in India, covering large, medium manufacturers. And I just wanted to highlight some very key important insights that came out of that study. And this is something which is food for thought. As per that study, 38% of the companies they surveyed, manufacturing companies they surveyed, do not have a digital transformation roadmap, 38%. Significant. Second, 8% are just beginning their transformation, and 16% have made initial progress as far as digital transformation is concerned. And we've heard Arvind talk about digital transformation and the impact. He talked about, the very existence of a company could be in question if you don't embark on digital, right? So these are scary numbers, because more than 50% are, still have a long way to go. And just 10% of the companies whom they surveyed are called as digital champions, because they have made some very significant progress in their transformation initiatives and have started to see tangible benefits. Now, this survey was only for large and medium-sized manufacturers. Now, just imagine the micro and the small. We have about 6.3 crore MSMEs in India. 99% of them are small. A lot of them are manufacturers. They have not even started their journey. And MSMEs represent the backbone of India's economy, right? So there's still a long way to go as far as digital transformation about manufacturing is concerned. Now, I also wanted to pick out a few insights which was from a Rockwell study. Rockwell Automation is a well-known name in the industrial automation space. And just a few days back, they came out with a very detailed report. This is a global survey. They surveyed 1,500 manufacturers across the world, including some 75 manufacturers in India. And I just wanted to highlight 2 or 3 important takeaways that came out of this. One is that, as per the study, 94% of them whom they surveyed, they are expecting to maintain and grow their workforce as a result of smart manufacturing tech adoption. 94%. 95% are using or evaluating smart manufacturing technology, up from 84% in 2023, which is again good. And third is 98% have a clear sustainability policy in place. Now, why am I talking about these, these findings? See, when you talk about Industry 5.0, there are three very important pillars as you transition to Industry 5.0. Number one is employee centricity, okay, or human centricity. We are increasingly seeing this paradigm when we need people to work along with tech. This whole cobots, collaborative robots, humans working with them, human and AI working together, right? So we are seeing that whole paradigm emerge. Second important dimension is resiliency of manufacturing, and third is sustainability. And you all know the importance of sustainability. We are living in a world where climate change is definitely impacting the world, impacting industry as well, right? So as organizations who are embarking on Industry 4.0 and as they make a transition to Industry 5.0, these are very important dimensions for them to think about. And we're going to hear some of the speakers talk about their whole journey as far as Industry 4.0 is concerned, and how are they preparing themselves, preparing the workforce for Industry 5.0. A couple of things that I also wanted to highlight before we get into the panel. This report also talks about the top 5 external obstacles that are impacting manufacturing. And the 5 are inflation, high energy costs, cybersecurity risks, shortage of skilled workers, which is a challenge in India, and supply chain disruptions. Arvind talked about the geopolitical situations, the war which is happening between Russia and Ukraine, in Middle East. Today, goods which have to go through the Suez Canal are going roundabout via the Cape of Good Hope and reaching the Western markets, right? And that is increasing the cost of logistics. And some of the 5 internal obstacles as per this report is attracting employees with desired skill sets. I think that's a big challenge that every industry is grappling with. Deploying and integrating new technology. We have a lot of legacy infrastructure, especially the manufacturers. How do you integrate the new technology with the legacy infra? That's another challenge. Budget constraints, which is always going to be a challenge. And the other important thing is balancing quality as well as growth. And lastly, capturing and contextualization data so that they can improve on it, right? And in talking about data, given that so much of data is being generated, it is only fair that we also talk about digital twins, because you're going to generate humongous amount of data, and you can actually build a digital twin of an asset, you can build it of a process or a system, right? So I just wanted to broadly set this context before we get into the panel, and I'm going to start by first getting Srinivasan into the discussion. And Srinivasan, you represent SRF, one of the oldest manufacturers in India, making technical textiles to chemicals. Can you share with the audience how is your Industry 4.0 journey progressing? Any specific examples where you really see the benefits of the transformation? And if you can also highlight, what are the challenges that you're encountering and how are you trying to address those challenges, Srinivasan?
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. See, I would like to start, I have been with the manufacturing industry overall more than 28 years now. Okay, I have seen what IT is from those days to currently. So the first and foremost thing is, those days, IT is just an EDP department. So you have an IT head, somebody comes and generates some, like what Arvind was saying, generate a payroll, this, that. This is all IT. IT was never represented at a leadership level in an organization. This is the first point. So my experience personally is, I've seen this. In the initial stages, IT is just an IT. Somebody will be there. They will do all these systems and etc. And then the real contribution from IT started coming in, where IT started creating an impact on the business. See, ultimately, any company, whether it's manufacturing or whatever it is, each and every process, at least directly or indirectly, need to translate into the bottom line of the organization. So there are finance or HR or etc., etc. In some way or the other, they need to translate to the bottom of the organization's flow. So maybe I can say 7 years back or even 8 years back, That is where, at least in our organization, maybe even 2024, maybe even before that, maybe 10, 12 years back I can take. So that is where IT really started contributing to the business growth. So that is where IT started looking in. Yes, we are running an ERP. Okay, so initially ERP was run and various versions we used to do. But I tell you, integrating a manufacturing system is one of the toughest, okay, the toughest. So it's an automation, but I'll tell you that's where your IoT, everything comes into play. So integrating a manufacturing system was really a toughest one. See, there are two things. One is initially the systems were there, people need to do a lot of data entry, they have to enter this shift data, the item-wise production data per shift, and etc., etc. But then at one stage they started asking, do I need to do shop floor management or do I need to do a data entry work? That is first question they asked. So it's an absolute rudimentary job to do a data entry, especially of the production data. That's where it really hit us. So a success of a system, at least this is our experience, is where in some organizations they feel that as long as the human interface is reduced as much as possible, my experience is it increases the effectiveness of the system being implemented. This is the first point. So that is where we looked into this IoT. I'm saying early stage of 4.4. So that is where, yes, it's a budget constraint, but that is where somebody was, I think Arvind was saying, budget, investment. Yes, board will ask you, okay, you need to project what is your investment, and you need to convince the board that this is what is going to give you the return. But I tell you, you cannot say I will give you a return within this year. These are all investments for the future, okay? And yes, I think maybe 12 years or 13 years back, we started this journey. We were able to tell that this is what, and our board was considered to accept it. But last 4 or 5 years, yes, companies started seeing the benefit of it. So that is where we started with the IoT, where we had a lot of sensors attached. And then what we started is we started automating each and every process of a manufacturing process. And there are various techniques are there. You have RFID is there, and we started bringing in SCADA system, your DCS. So this is where we started collecting the data. And then there was a big challenge of integrating that with the ERP. Okay, I'm saying a global ERP. It's not a custom system. So that integration is a very, very important part, because a standalone data will not add any value to it. So ultimately, all these data gets translated into your production data, and all those production data gets into your financial book with the value. Okay, that value is very important. That is where various things comes into play. You know that value means cost has to be there. You need to have an item level, product level costing, etc., etc. Okay. So this is where the journey started. It started with how to automate your financial books. So that eliminates your finance people's certain activity. And then people started looking into it, how to improve how to reduce the downgraded products. That's another thing, because these things add a cost to the organization. Reduction of your downgrades, especially, and thereby reducing the waste. This is where your AI started coming in. This is where your ML started coming in, where with the data we used to get from the automated machine, we were able to generate certain MIS reports, or you can say your ML forecasts, etc., etc. So this is where, that is the next step of automation, which gave us a visibility. And then we started also started doing a sort of a price prediction, because ultimately the management needs to take a call how to place a product in the market. So how do you do? Best, you know what is going to be your competitor's price. At least you may not know the competitor's price for the future, but you know what is their current price, and you need to find a way of what is going to be my future pricing. So based on these things, management can take a decision, what is a roadmap to be done. So this is where your AI and other systems comes into play, which will help you for a price prediction of your products. And then we did various automation. I'm not getting into automation, which I hope many of them knows. We did various kind of automation. And then we started doing, I will not say it is Industry 4.0, but still even your budgeting and all these things, everything we started doing in automation. And then, see, one thing, I don't know, you may have a question later on. See, the one biggest problem with Industry 4.0, I'll tell you, the biggest problem is we say that we want to reduce waste in the manufacturing. But please understand, if you have done it, if you have got a sensor for running it for 10 years, you know what the hell of data, what is the amount of data you get. You generate a huge waste in data. This is where your 4.0 is going to already started creating a roadblock, where you don't know what data to use it for. Lakhs and lakhs of data, terabytes of data gets generated. Many of it, I am sure many organizations will not use. So this is going to be the biggest challenge of 4.0. It is also a challenge for us also. Okay,
right.
Just stop there.
Yeah, thanks, Srinivasan. I think you very beautifully articulate how you started the whole thing, sensorization through IoT, and then the automation, and then AI and ML, and very, very important point that you raised about humongous amount of data being generated, and a lot of that is, they call it noise. It doesn't make sense, right? So how do you extract value from that and get those insights is going to be critical. So let me move to Raghu, who represents Thejo Engineering. Again, 50 years since you all have been in existence. Very similar to what I asked Srinivasan. How has been your progress as far as the Industry 4.0 is concerned? Any specific use cases that you would like to share where you started to see impact, and any challenges that you've encountered? Raghu.
Thank you. As far as we are concerned, we were sort of a late joiners to this entire party. Not because of anything else, just because we were going through a huge transformation as far as the manufacturing setup itself was concerned. We are almost doubling our capacity, and there was a lot of upgrades happening onto the existing systems, etc. So the management decided to sort of put it off for some time. I wasn't very happy. But then, in hindsight, that seems to have been a good thing to have happened, because in this time frame of a year and a half, 2 years or so, a lot of things have changed. The equipment has become a lot better. The devices that you put on have become better. A lot more clarity on use cases has come up, which probably was not there when I actually wanted to implement this. And the best thing that has happened in the local market, when I say local, it could be Chennai or it could be India in general, there's been a lot of maturity as far as the vendors who are there to support you is concerned. A huge improvement that's happened in the last 12 to 18 months or so. So compared to when I was talking to people earlier to what I was talking now, it's a huge change. And taking on from where Srini stopped, which is about the wastage of data. That is definitely a huge problem. So how did we sort of try and go about doing that is, we actually threw a data analyst into it, which normally people don't. You actually give it to them and expect the engineers to figure out what's happening. So instead of showing them graphs, what we did is we actually went about doing analysis and giving them, saying that, do you know that this is happening here? Is that okay? Because that seems to be an outlier. Do you know this is happening? So every month we used to come out with a series of findings from our side. Some of them were false positives. Fine enough. We don't know the environment, or the data analyst didn't know it. But then that sort of got the engineers themselves thinking that this is how we can use data. So that was one area where we found, if we don't, it's not like putting the food on the table and then walking away and expecting them to eat it. No, it doesn't. Initially you got to spoon feed. Not that we are experts, but we got to get that thing going. Otherwise, he hit the nail on the head. There's going to be tons of data lying there. Nobody wants to look at it. He says, I've already been doing this for 30 years. What are you going to tell me more? So unless you highlight it to them, then it sort of happens. And then, of course, it's all about use cases. Have we totally used, we're talking about Industry 5.0 today, have we used four or the proponents or the whatever principles or whatever has been suggested on 4? I pretty much don't think so. I think we are still scratching the surface even there. There could be certain organizations which have moved well ahead, but broadly speaking, I think we're still scratching the surface even as far as 4 is concerned.
Thanks, Raghu. Again, you talked about data wastage. So I think from both of you all, it's very clear that so much of data that is being generated, and how are you going to harness that data and use it to make the right decisions, to predict outcomes is going to be critical. Thanks, Raghu. Let me get Prasoon from Twyn. I hope I pronounced the company Twyn. Okay. Okay. So Prasoon, can you tell us what are the kind of trends that we are seeing globally from an Industry 4.0 perspective, globally as well as in India, because you also are addressing the Indian market. So can you share, Prasoon?
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for this beautiful opportunity to talk here. I'm based out of UAE, and I had been in this award show and talks for a while, since it started, since the inception. So I have seen the journey of digital transformation right from the start, especially related to conferences and almost all the panels I discussed. So I'm taking a cue from all these years because I'm trying to correlate the entire information. When I talk about the industries, so industries are definitely going through a massive transformation process. I should say, rather than digital transformation, massive business transformation process. So when I say business transformation, as Sir said, that IT was just core support department, and then it got into digitalization, and then financial value and value and valuation, those kind of things happen. Right now, most of the industries are basically preferring to get the OT data, which is the core, OT, operational technology. Now, how to get that? Why? Because they had the legacy systems for a very long time, very, very long time, and they want a massive transformation to happen. Why? Because it is important for the unit economics, right? At the end of the day, as you mentioned, unit economics is everything that drives the production business. And in order to have that, you ought to have what is that goes into building your product, especially in the manufacturing part. So at Twyn, we are at the epicenter of creating a real business value by having the OT IT transformation with multiple sources of data. Now, what are those multiple sources? One is the OT, which is the operation technology. Of course, OT IT systems, interfaces, actuators, adapters. Then MES, DCS, which is the distributed control system. ERP systems, SCADA systems, and the best thing is the Twyn, and if you go to our booth, I mean, you can have all the CIOs here and all the decision makers, you can just visit our booth here, and you can just experience the real immersive view of the data that we are getting from the core shop floor. So it's shop floor data in a 3D virtual replica format where you can exactly know what is going on behind each and every asset which has a very, very high value. That's what technology, so coming back to your trends, that's where the technology is leading towards, and we are trying to trigger that revolution. So I still remember the French Revolution was something which triggered the whole industrial revolution era, and we had aggregate era, and then knowledge economy, and then information, then cyber physical systems, and then now this cyber physical system from 4.0 is augmented with the human systems now. So we are talking about industry 5.0. So coming from the Indian diaspora, most of our customers are definitely, they are struggling with their OT systems where they want the real transformation. Multi-party vendor lock-in where they need to really get value from their existing system and get to a data hub. So that's another challenge. Definitely, data privacy is another big concern. Why? Because they had multi-party systems and the data dependencies are there between various sources, and they need to basically create a solid data governance model. And last but not the least is overall, I should say, the data ontology or data taxonomy, in which the classification of data, how data can be classified and basically represented internally as well externally to bring values. So I'm just giving you a 360 view of what are the various trends and how Twyn is supporting this in a holistic manner. Thank you.
Thanks, Prasoon. I think a couple of things which I just want to pick up. One, you talked about getting business value from OT data. And as part of my role with Frost & Sullivan as an independent consultant, I have done assessments for manufacturers, and some of them are very old manufacturers.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is that some of the machinery are so old, you can't even extract data from there.
Absolutely.
Many of them, you can't even connect them to PLCs and SCADAs, and it becomes really tough. You got to use external sensors, pick up signatures,
Absolutely.
get that data. It becomes very challenging, and this is true of many manufacturers, right? So that is a real challenge. You talked also about data privacy, again, very critical.
Yeah.
And perhaps that explains why you don't have too many manufacturers having the data on the cloud. Perhaps they prefer to probably have...
That's what one of the major challenges what we are getting in most of, especially in the high value assets, for example, oil and gas, because Middle East is very popular for oil and gas, ONG business. So in the oil and gas, they want the data to be there in their own systems and in their own network, because for them, that's everything for them. So yeah, I'm just giving an example.
Yeah, so let me get to Srinivasan again. And just to pick up, you spoke about how we have transitioned so far. And it's a journey. And so while India was still probably, it's fair to say that we are maybe at 3 or 3.5. It is a while before we get to 5.0. But obviously organizations, manufacturing companies have to prepare for the transition. It is going to take a while. And as I mentioned, there are 2 or 3 important pillars when you talk about industry 5.0. The whole human element, the human centricity, the sustainability piece, and how do you build resilient manufacturing. So how is SRF preparing for industry 5.0? Can you briefly share with us, Srinivasan?
Okay, see, just to add on to 4.0 itself, see, I tell you, it's a practical experience. We talk about sensors, SCADA, this, that, so many things are available. But I tell you, it's not very easy. You need to validate the data which comes out of your sensors. In many cases, we have seen it's not a straightforward case. Let's say, at least for minimum of 6 months, you need to validate the data which comes from your sensors matches with what actually physically you would have done. That kind of a validation you need to do. Otherwise, you could end up in a different data. Because there are many hardships. It's not easy. It looks very easy, but people need to keep that in mind when they are venturing into 4.0 itself. So you need to have that patience. Your management needs to put in that effort to be ready. But once it is stabilized, once it has matured, once your sensors, your SCADA system, your DCS is giving out the right data, because it needs to be fine-tuned. There are various parameters in that. Once you reach that, it will be an excellent flow for you. This itself is it's a Herculean task. It's not an easy. And I tell you, this is in a discrete engineering, this will work very well. I'm not sure about Prasoon's oil process industry. It is extremely difficult. I am telling you, we have seen it. Process industry, you cannot put a sensor like that to get the data.
Your chemical industry is example of that, right?
See, I don't want to get into individual thing, but I'll tell you in general, process industry, this entire 4.0 is a big challenge even today. I don't know, maybe Prasoon can comment on that, but we have seen it. It's not a straightforward, you take the data, do. No. To some extent, because it's a flow. It's a continuous flow. So how will you know that this is what the starting, this is my ingredient consumed, this is my product in a continuous flow process? How do you do that? So it's a challenge, I'm saying. I'm not looking for a solution now, but these are the challenges still a 4.0 is not able to solve. Forget 5. So this is the reality I'm talking. Maybe, okay.
I think to answer this because...
Yeah, you want to take a crack at it? Yeah.
Sir, what you're talking about is basically on the chemical composites actually, especially the BOM analysis, the bill of material analysis, when you have a complete flow and then how do you basically you can take it out. Definitely that's difficult. So there's certain aspects on a very generic level like your asset integrity management or how your asset is performing, or your predictive analytics, or condition monitoring. So that is where the industry 4.0 or 5.0 can add value. But in the process manufacturing, even in the oil and gas, still the research is on the drilling operations. I'm just giving an example, like because it's such a complex operation. It's very difficult and still the research is going on. What we can do is what is possible, like equipment's monitoring, so critical equipment's failure analysis, FEMA, which is the failure affected mode analysis, MTBR, MTBF, all those kinds of things you can take care of. But on the chemical analysis of the composites and the bill of materials, definitely. Why? Because the system, if I would have an AI system which can have around 10 years of data of the BOM, which is the bill of materials, which is changing with the complete fluid mechanics of what we are talking about, or computational models, then I can at least reach to some accuracy of what exactly is happening. But again, that's a different subject altogether. That's an R&D subject altogether, and which is continuous thing. But again, from the generic point of view, yeah, it can be. What
Right.
I told you is possible. Yeah.
Okay, let me get to Raghu and Raghu.
So 5.0, okay.
Oh yeah, okay.
So 5.0, see, it's too early. This is the reality. I don't want to say something. It's too early. But point is, like what I said is, see, the major problem with 4.0 is, again, people know that there is a cloud and etc. Okay, but when tons of data is going to the cloud, processing in the cloud is a big problem. It requires more infrastructure. It requires more capability. More analysis needs to be done. So what we are thinking is whether the data can be, this is what, okay, in a tech part, it's called edge computing. Or you can say some fog computing or edge computing, okay? So edge computing. So edge computing is one aspect we can look into it, where I want to do the processing of a majority of the data on premise itself before sending it to a cloud. So maybe that angle we can look into it, and also we can also look into robots. Okay, somebody was telling about robots. There is another terminology called cobots. Okay, so cobots is what we are exploring. It's too early still. See, we know that people can use robots for various within the perimeter work, like shifting the roles and other things from one place to another, or the packing industry. You can do robots for automatic packing. So these things are already there actually. So we need to look into cobots, where it's a human-assisted robots which can do many other finer activity other than just a human physical work. So that is one, and this is other aspect which we are looking into it. But still a very early stage to go beyond this. But this is one, but I tell you in general, it's all sustainability. As even Arvind was telling, it's all sustainability, your economic sustainability, your environmental sustainability, and your social. Because we need to ensure our workforce also. Intention of all these things is not to reduce the workforce. That's not the intention. Intention is to improve the productivity.
Absolutely, and the robots will play a big part. They use this 3D terminology. anything which is dirty, dull, and dangerous can be done by the robots. So mundane stuff by robots and get the humans to work on the more creative aspects. So they definitely need to collaborate. Let me get Raghu back. And Raghu, is it too premature to talk about Industry 5.0? I mean, is your organization, are they having a clear plan in terms of how do you want to approach this whole thing?
Like I said, I think we're still scratching the surface on 4. So 5 is a bit off at this point in time. But I think the debate is still on out there as to where does 4 end and where does 5 start. I sort of came across this book sometime back. It says, the title itself says what this debate is all about. It says Industry 5.0, the human element of 4th industrial revolution. So a lot of people who still feel that the human element which is highlighted in 5 is actually just a version of 4, so maybe 4 point something. And it's not 5 yet. This debate is still going on. And it's either the example which I'm going to quote happened and then 5 came, or 5 came and then this example happened. I don't know. I think all of us heard about this Tesla going, I mean, they were very aggressive on, running a huge plant with just a handful of people. They attempted it, and in Elon Musk style, they went big on it. I think after a month, 2 months, 3 months or so, they realized that it's not going to work. They pulled out a lot of robots, robotic machines. They did a lot less of automation, threw people into it. So that's exactly what 5 is talking about. So these guys tried, but being Tesla, they went in for a fail fast. I mean, they didn't say that, this is it, and, just go after it like that. So they failed fast and they realized the mistake, they retrieved the situation. So putting these two things together, that what I read in that book versus what actually happened to Tesla, did we miss the human element when we are doing 4? I don't think so. It was always there. It's just that these guys are calling it out. Did we miss the sustainability? I don't think so, because ESG and on the rest of the things have always been around, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7 years. It's always been around. So, but it's good to refocus on the human being. I think that's the way I would put it, rather than going, hell for leather with automation and blindly trusting robots or machines or things like that. I think we're sort of evolving towards the whole thing. And another example that I would like to give is, I'm being a bit philosophical here. When COVID happened, everybody said, Zoom classes have started, Teams meetings have started, so we don't need to go back to office. Schools are going to shut down. It didn't happen. As human beings, we need to be there. We need that interaction. I'm being a bit philosophical, but you'll have to live with that. But schools are still running. And those people who actually went out and spectacular failures which are happening in terms of, remote classes and things like that, we are sort of seeing that now. So this is a cycle. It's sort of, it's a cyclical thing which is evolving and moving forward. So there's no revolution, it's more of an evolution is what I would sort of put it.
Talking about the human element, Raghu, see, one of the challenges that the manufacturing industry is facing is to attract talent, right? So talent, you need people in the shop floors, and also you need people with the relevant digital skills to work on all these technologies. So is there a problem that you're facing in terms of attracting talent?
I think that's something which almost everybody faces here in terms of talent. But like going back to the other point about what Mr. Narayanamurthy mentioned yesterday, he said all this is fine. Automation is fine, robotics is fine. But you've got to find a fine mix, considering that we are in India. We've got to find balance between, putting people there, which is available at a lesser cost. Are you able to skill him up? Are you able to put the right processes in place so that he or she is monitored, mentored, and trained and allowed to work, rather than blindly trusting? I think he made that statement yesterday. With respect to finding talent, yes, that's always been a problem and will continue to be a problem. I don't think there's nothing new to it. I'm sure people will agree with that.
Right. Okay, let me get Prasoon back. And Prasoon, digital twin, it's been around for a long time. Many organizations have started their journey in terms of using digital twin for certain use cases. So can you share maybe an example or two in terms of what you've done for a customer where you've implemented a digital twin solution and they started to see the impact?
I think seeing is more than is more believing actually. So rather than talking about it, so all the CXOs again, I repeat, CXOs and leaders, please have a go to our booth and exactly feel what his question is. I'll leave this question for the booth. Let them answer this, but in 2 lines I will answer 2 solid use cases, one for oil and gas and one for automotive manufacturing. In the oil and gas, the most typical infra is oil rigs infra. So oil rigs infra, if you have by any chance a kind of command center or the rig monitoring system for oil and gas, that's fantabulous. Why? Because that practically exists in multiple SCADA screens. It's something like you're watching 29 to 9,000 to 900, whatever movies together. So here is where your bilge tank is, here is where your main tank is, then here is where your fire system is, here is where your deluge system is, and that's how the typical SCADA systems, their screens are there. What we have done, and we are very privileged to mention that here in front of so many IT leaders and stalwarts, that we have created a 3D, which is 3-dimensional, industrial BIM, which is the building information modeling, certified model of an oil rig, and also we have connected the 3D with live physical assets, with the data which is available and clean, of course clean from multiple, through the proper ETL, AI-driven ETL, which is the extract, transfer, and loading process into the central data hub, and then finally creating those pipelines into those 3-dimensional assets. So what you see in 2D these days, what we have not only converted in 3D, but you can have a real extrapolation of that 5% valuable data, not the 95% dark data. The 5%, the value-driven data, you can see, and you can create the real-time KPIs. Not only that, you can definitely get into each and every asset. Almost have an AI-based, immersive view, and you can get into those assets and see what exactly is happening there. So I think all of you kindly visit the booth and have a look at it. I think you will have more experience around that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Prasoon. I think what is very interesting is when you talk about digital twin, is this integration of multiple technologies that's coming into play now, because you need sensors to extract data from the physical world, and it has to be done at scale. And then you're generating humongous amount of data, so you need very good networks, and 5G will come into the play there because you're sending this data. And then, of course, you need the cloud infrastructure to host all this massive amounts of data, and that's your AI and machine learning will come into the equation. So multiple technologies kind of coming together, and then you get the real benefit of the twin. We just have barely 2.5 minutes left, so I'm going to open the floor for questions. And if anyone has any question, my request to you is to please introduce yourself and also mention to whom you're directing the question to. So anyone has a question? Question for the speakers?
Do we have any questions? Anyone?
No, we still
I think we are pretty much clear.
I think Srinivasan, you wanted to talk about on the digital twin. You wanted to comment?
Oh, see, digital twin, that's what he's saying. So in our case, we are using digital twin for asset maintenance, basically.
Okay.
So what it will do is, I hope some of them knows what is a digital twin is first of all. It's basically you get the real equipment. It could be, as you said, production. It could be a shop floor twin. It could be process twin, anything. So get the data, whatever is the equipment, get the entire equipment's data, replicate it or mirror it, and then use the data for asset maintenance. In our case, asset maintenance. So we take the data, and also whenever there is a breakdown supposed to happen, that automatically will trigger based on the data. It gets integrated with the ERP, and the entire process flow. As he said, it could be used for a preventive maintenance. You can do various analysis, and it's a really good feature. This is my experience, our experience.
Okay, great.
But I'll also just touch one point. I don't know how many of them know. See, Industry 4.0, there are various pillars in that. It's not just automation. People should know that. So there are, it depends on your organization's priority. So there are various frameworks available where an organization can get measured also. One such thing is the CIRI framework. So Smart Industry Readiness Index, it's called. So people should evaluate actually.
We do massive industry assessments definitely before we talk about digital twins, because the readiness is very important, as he rightly mentions. Yeah, so that's part of the scope. I mean, the first thing is we really understand whether this particular chosen industry under observation is ready for the digitalization or not.
Okay, my clock says 0 seconds, so we have run out of time. So what I would suggest is that after the session, if you all want to meet the speakers, you all can do so. But I would wish to thank Raghu, Srinivasan, and Prasoon. Wonderful discussion, a lot of insights that I've learned, and I'm sure you would have garnered a lot of insights as well. So on that note, I would like to conclude the session, and over to you, ma'am.